Broadcasting live from the Georgia Technology Summit 2025 at the Woodruff Arts Center, this is Business RadioX. And now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, broadcasting live at the Georgia Technology Summit 2025. So excited to be talking to my next guest, Dr. Raj Hazra with Quantinuum. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I heard, rumor has it, you just got off the stage to give the keynote here.
That's right. I was on stage and I had the pleasure of talking about my most favorite topic. How is quantum computing going to revolutionize the planet and our lives?
Well, you know, we had Larry Williams on earlier and he keeps mentioning quantum, but he never explained it. Do you mind giving our listeners kind of a 101 version of quantum?
Sure. Quantum computing is computing the way nature does. As you know, nature is computing all the time, right? Keeps counts, does addition, subtractions in its own way to make things happen for us. It uses physical things. Of course, nature does not need semiconductors. It has its own things and physical things like atoms and lights and photons to do its own computing. Quantum computing is trying to compute the way nature computes, using physical objects like, again, atoms or photons of light to implement computing in the style that nature uses computing for. The advantage of that is, nature computes with very low energy. It computes very powerfully using paradigms that we don't fully understand. And it represents things in a way that is fundamentally different than the human way of approximating them. So it can get us to better results, more accurate results, with far more efficient use of resources.
So how did this come about? Like, who connected the dots to say there's a better way of doing things?
Quantum physics has been around for a while, and, the stalwarts of the quantum mechanics era, like Richard Feynman, once hypothesized that if nature computes, we should be able to do that as well. And that's kicked off for many, many years now. This effort to go look at not quantum mechanics, but making quantum computers, that is, building computers using the principles of quantum mechanics. That's been a pursuit, a scientific pursuit. Now it's become an industrial pursuit that companies such as ours and others actually harnessing control over quantum mechanics to build these computers. And these computers have gotten very, very capable and powerful already.
So what is what stage are we at now? What can it do that's different than what a traditional computer can do?
So one of the first things is, quantum computing was created for cryptography because it was such a powerful way to compute that it could encrypt things with much better keys. And, if you didn't have quantum computers, you can break those keys or break the encryption. But, it's gone well beyond just cryptography and the dark people do in the basements of buildings and stuff like that. It's gone to where it's now generating data on how chemical reactions happen, for instance, and simulating those kinds of phenomena that are actually fundamental for us to understand if we are going to use artificial intelligence and AI tools to understand and create and predict behavior. So just think of new ways to deliver drugs into your body, right? Creating new materials to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. How to generate water, from water, hydrogen, so you can actually build hydrogen-fueled cars. Understanding those things at a chemically accurate level, at a biologically accurate level is what quantum computers can do, that classical computers struggle to do, not just because they don't have enough computing power, because the representation inside a classical computer is an approximation of that quantum phenomenon.
So are we at a stage that it isn't just kind of ideas in a person's head, but it's actually happening where there are drugs that are now being developed because of their leveraging this?
Absolutely. We have from last year was kind of a turning point in the evolution of quantum computing because we built quantum computers that could not be simulated. on classical computers. Up until then, every quantum computer someone had, you could simulate. So you could really not do anything unique. For the first time in 2024, we have quantum computers that are generating unique data for the first time that you can generate with classical computers.
So if you had a classical computer, a traditional computer can't do the things that are happening in a quantum computer. That's what you're saying, that
That's right.
they're now two different things. It's not one thing that can simulate the other.
So that's exactly it. The classical computers are not because of the computational power, but even the mathematical framework that runs on it
is different.
It's good for the world we see.
Right.
We can model streets and bridges and joints and junctions, right? We can't model how two very complex molecules interact in a reaction.
Right. So now with these computers, you can do that.
We can do that, and we can add that information as training information for AI agents that are now much smarter as a result, understanding how chemical reactions actually work, and therefore being able to predict new materials or classify materials more accurately than you could ever do before.
Now, is it something that can the person do both? Can you be an expert in the legacy computers and the quantum, or it's going to require a new kind of mindset in order to leverage quantum?
Quantum computing has its own things that you need to learn.
So there's its own language, there's its own way of doing business.
and own way of even thinking about the problem. What is a quantum algorithm is very different than a classical algorithm. But you raise a very good point. Quantum computing does not obsolete classical computing, because all of these use cases happen when classical and quantum computers are used together. Just take the example of a classical AI engine,
right,
that's trained with quantum data. So again, the quantum computer is the input to the classical computer.
But then is there going to be a time when quantum is going to replace the legacy, where the quantum AI is going to be the one dealing with what quantum is originating?
There will be some problems where it'll be more advantageous to run it on a quantum computer versus a classical computer. But for the broad, vast scale of things, particularly where AI is the computational agent, we foresee a very, very long time of coexistence of both kinds of computing. It's the 1 + 1 greater than 2 that's really the magic here.
And a very long time in today's world, is that a year? Like, what is very long? What's a very long time look like in your world?
A very long time is decades, if not centuries.
So it's a long, long time.
Yeah, it's a long, long time.
Because things are moving pretty quick.
Yeah, that is true. In technology, things move very fast, but we're talking decades, if ever.
And then when do you see a time when quantum is going to be we won't be talking about it as this mystical thing, that it's going to be just part of the workflow?
That era we are at the beginning of that era. As I said, last year was kind of a watershed for both hardware and software to be at a place where you could start looking at real problems to solve, like designing new drugs, like designing new chemicals. And so I think this will be very much by the end of this decade, certainly the general public will be able to say, and that thing was created with the help of a quantum computer, and without it couldn't have been done. Within this decade, we will have its ChatGPT moment.
Okay, so we're not at a ChatGPT moment where
we are very close to and have glimpses of, and that's why companies like us are working 24/7, 365 to pull that future in.
So you're just trying to accelerate to get there here as fast as possible.
As fast as humanly possible, a quantum leap forward, no pun intended.
So now in your business, who is that ideal client? Who is the person or the company that needs to be partnering with you?
So that's the beauty of quantum computing. It's not a niche. So my ideal clients are big companies that are driving at the forefront of transportation, finance, energy, bio and life sciences. These are all companies that are in the discovery of new things. That is what drives their business forward. And that discovery needs a constant fuel of AI plus quantum in order for them to accelerate their business, differentiate their business, and win.
And then are you finding that they're all open to conversations, or are some of them more, are you getting the typical early adopter laggard kind of model?
We are certainly seeing a growing interest in quantum across the board. There are certainly folks who are moving faster than others. There are the early adopters. There are the trailblazers, if you will. But in general, if you saw the industry 5 years ago, there were literally the Lewis and Clarks who, on any given day, you could say, are they wise or foolish? But today, it's an industry that is accelerating to either lead or catch up.
And it's one of those kind of points of inflection where you better pick a side if you're not leading it
is definitely at a point where if you're not considering how quantum affects your business, you're probably late.
So you got to pull the trigger. Like this is
you have to pull the trigger. You have to start understanding quantum computing. You have to start building your workforce within the company to understand how to use quantum computing and then engage with the quantum industry to start doing use cases and experiments to then build your conviction. It is no longer about the next business cycle. It is now.
You can't wait to see what your competitor's doing or it's going to be too late.
That's right.
So there is a cost of inaction.
There's a cost of inaction. There's, I would say, the adoption of quantum and AI is going to be a tectonic shift decider between people who were winners of the last era versus the new winners. And those that have aggressively taken on the AI plus quantum mantra, if you will, or challenge, have the best shot at being the winners again.
And second place, it's almost going to be last place if you're not going to win this.
Well, yeah, that's what the last 50 years of technology has taught us, right? It's very very expensive to be a fast follower in this business.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to learn more, where should they go?
Well, they're certainly welcome to come to Quantinuum.com.
Mm-hmm.
And because one of our corporate strategic objectives is not just to build the best hardware and software in the world, but to also ensure that we can help the world educate themselves on quantum. So we run hackathons, we run quantum readiness programs, and our website has a wealth of information on use cases and technologies in the quantum space. Great place to get started. Then, of course, there's a lot more to do, hopefully hands-on.
Now, where are you based here in Georgia? Where are you based?
We are a worldwide company. So our headquarters is in Colorado. But we have 8 locations all over the world, 3 in the U.S., 3 in the U.K., Germany, Japan, and we are expanding very rapidly. So maybe Georgia is well on the cards.
So why was it important for you to come to the Georgia Technology Summit?
It was important to come here because I love the idea of being able to continue to talk about the possibility that quantum computing will have in every industry. And I love talking to those in forums that are looking at where to go next, not trying to just preserve a legacy, but create the next one. And forums like this is a perfect place where you bring in the companies in a collaborative atmosphere, the leaders of these companies thinking about not just what they do well, but what they need to do well next, and being able to have that dialogue.
Well, Raj, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing such important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Georgia Technology Summit 2025.